I've been thinking how there's feeling bad and then there's feeling bad about feeling bad. And quite often we can't do anything about feeling bad. You know, something has happened, we feel bad about it. But we can do an awful lot about feeling bad about feeling bad. And in my experience, for myself and watching with other people, we're often so full of self-loathing because we think we shouldn't be feeling bad at all. So I think a sort of an acceptance sometimes that something has hurt us, and it's just okay to feel in pain about that. And the best thing to do is have a really good cry and take care of ourselves, rather than this kind of bracing up and carrying on and, you know, I shouldn't be caring about that anymore, we say to ourselves. But you know what, if we care about it, it's much better to pay it a bit of attention, and then things should slightly lighten up a bit. Just that being able to say, actually, I do feel sad about that, and that's okay, can be quite an important step. My name is Cathy Renson-Brink, and I am the author of 2 books. The first one's called The Last Act of Love, and my second book is called A Manual for Heartache. I think a lot about stories and how we use stories as we try and work out our lives, and I was talking to a therapist about this, and they told me about the notion of content and process. And so this is the idea that content is the thing that's happened, what's happened to us, and process is the thing that we all have in common. It's how we're trying to accommodate it, what we're doing and how we're trying to get on. And I thought this was so interesting, and I realised that in lots of ways my first book was my content. It was the story of what happened to my brother and how hard I found it to witness this. But I wondered if there was a way of usefully and helpfully sharing my process in another book, in a book that would be less about me and more about things, the universal nature of heartache and suffering, and the things that we can all do to try to help us live well, kind of no matter what the thing is that's caused us the pain. I think as a society we try to impose a hierarchy on pain. So we expect some things to be difficult for people, and can be a bit more dismissive about other things. Whereas actually, I think it sort of doesn't matter what it is. If you as the person feel hurt by it, then it's important, it matters, and you need to look after yourself and be looked after by other people with love and care. You know, obviously with death, we understand that that's going to be difficult with people, but there are other things. I think we really underestimate, for example, the impact that work stuff can have on people. So when someone gets made redundant unexpectedly, that can be incredibly significant and difficult, but nobody really rates it as a thing. Sometimes people suffer stuff that's a bit undignified or might be perceived to be their fault, and again, it's more difficult for them to sort of get support from the society around them. So I always try to think that it kind of doesn't, you know, none of that hierarchy matters. If you as a person are feeling sad, then kind of telling yourself off and saying that you don't deserve to feel sad, that's not going to get you anywhere. If I could give advice to my former self, I would, obviously I couldn't, you can't do anything about the fact that bad things happen, but actually I think I would encourage myself now, if I could travel in time and talk to myself, I would encourage myself not to try to escape from the pain I was feeling, and to know that it was okay to be in that pain. And lots of people have said to me this, that when they were in their first bit of grief, they actually thought they were insane. Further along the line, they've realised that wasn't insanity. They didn't have a medical condition then. That's just what grief is like. It feels like a storm at first, and it whips around you. But actually, sadly, it's part of being human, and it's sort of the cost of love. If we love deeply, then we will lose people, and then we will feel terrible. I used to think there was some magic thing I could learn about, some magic thing that would somehow make everything okay. But up to date, there doesn't seem to be. And I'm still myself trying to pick my way through what's an appropriate response to a world in which really cruel things happen, and at what point have I tipped over to where my vision is very bleak and I've ceased to be able to use any kind of logic in interpreting my surroundings. And so that's my personal challenge, which I think I'm maybe getting a little bit better at navigating. I think I found things easier for myself when I started to try and think of my mental health as though it were my physical health. Because if I mean, I do have a bad back, and it doesn't actually cause me any anguish. I just know I've got a bad back. It might be a little bit unfair. I don't spend an awful lot of time thinking about why, and I just get on with trying to do the right things for it, which include, if it gets really bad, I seek professional help. But also, I know simple things I should and shouldn't do. Like, I know that if I wear a really heavy bag on one shoulder, then I'll start experiencing a lot of pain after a couple of days. So, and if you start thinking of your mind like it's your back, or like it's your dodgy right ankle, or like it's your skin, then somehow it takes that fear and panic out of it. And I think if we could all, if everybody, whether or not you have any mental health issues or not, if everybody took more of that view to it, I think that would probably be a helpful step. So I wrote a letter called Instructions to My Future Self, and I've already used it several times because it's just, I realised that one of the things about being depressed is your whole world outlook is bleak, and your ability to think and process thoughts just kind of, nothing works in the same way. And I sort of had this realization that actually when I'm well, my well self needs to tell me what to do in the future, so I can look after myself in the future. And so I wrote down a set of instructions, and they're really simple, but they're really good, and I use them. And it's just about stopping and almost literally taking a few breaths and just trying to pause. I don't find writing easy, but the joyous bit is it's so joyous to have a book published, because then the people at your publishers who get involved and who I like just the fact that other clever people want to design a book cover for you that's really beautiful. I find that so I just find that so exciting. And of course, hearing from people who've read the book and who like it is just it's astonishing, really. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that I think reading has saved my life sort of several times, again and again and again. And I still think, for whatever the future might bring, my main ally, I think, will always be reading. And actually, I don't think reading has any downsides. I think that there's such a wealth of people's experiences between the pages, and it's calming. And you kind of it offers opportunities both for self-discovery and self-reflection, but also it takes you out of yourself. And I do think quite a lot of looking after your mental well-being is it's a really odd thing where you kind of have to be more self-aware so that you don't do the things that will make you ill. But also you don't want to be too obsessed with yourself, because that's not going to a good place either. And for me, reading really perfectly seems to occupy my mind in just exactly the right and good way. It makes me feel connected to the rest of the world. It makes me, even though it's an activity you do alone, it feels really social to me. I like reading about people who are different from me. I like reading from people who lived in a different time. And then, of course, and I enjoy talking about books with people. I absolutely love, and when I was a bookseller, I just loved talking to strangers on the shop floor, and I still pretty much love that. I love talking to people. I have to restrain myself, actually, because I always want to talk to strangers on the tube about what they're reading, which sometimes people think is a bit eccentric. But I think talking to strangers about books is one of life's great delights.